Welcome to another episode of The Art of Bird Photography. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about simplification. Simplification in bird photography is really simple. It's a really simple idea. It's to take an interesting scene and an interesting bird and try and remove elements from the scene so that the message or the subject is more clear. The example today I'll show you is this bananaquit. The bananaquit is a small little bird. It jumps from flower to flower, and it is a very quick bird. It's very fast. Now, this is an example shot I took just to illustrate the concept. And I want to ask the question with this photo. Is this a good photo? There's a lot of good things going on in this photo here. What I like is the background. The background has a nice gradient, green on the left, a little blue down here. It's got bright red flowers that look very nice against the background. It's got a lot of the environment of the bird, but there are some things that are wrong with this photo that I don't like too much. Number one is that the lighting on the bird is a little harsh. Now, the sun was still less than 45 degrees. I think it was about 35 degrees in the sky. So the light itself wasn't bad on this day, but the position of the bird is not good for the direction of the light. And I do like the chaotic nature of the scene, but the chaos isn't highly controlled. For example, if I were to ask myself, how would I draw this scene if I were there and the scene was still and I had a pad of paper and a pencil? How would I draw this scene? Well, one thing I would definitely not do is put all this bright stuff in the background here, all these bright, almost overexposed plants. Now, I did do some editing to lessen the highlights a little bit, but there's not too much you can do with a scene like this. It's all chaotic. It's taking away from the emphasis on the subject. It's too random. The chaos is too random. I think if you want to display chaos in a scene, you would have to find more controlled chaos, because right now the photo is all random. There's also a little bright spot. That bright spot is very distracting. I don't think it adds anything to the photo. There's this bright ray of sunshine on this branch in the very back here. That's also kind of horrible. There's a plant in the foreground here. Now, stuff in the foreground isn't necessarily bad, but I don't think this plant in the foreground adds too much. It does add a little bit of depth maybe, but on the right you also have this even closer plant that's just become an out of focus blur and mess. Some of these things on the bottom are ugly, and you also, these red flowers here look very nice, and there are a lot of things obscuring them. Now, it's not a bad thing to have some things obscuring the flowers, but you've got a lot of obstructions that take away from the form of the flower in every instance. So you never really get a good sense of the flower in any part of the photograph. So that bright red stuff, which looks very nice, is being obscured in too many places. Again, it's okay to have some obstructions to your subject in certain areas, but here it's obstructed everywhere. Another thing I don't like is that this bananaquit, the bill is very close to one of the red flower petals or whatever these things are. And the tip of the bill touches the edge of that, and you lose the form of the bird. It's also coming out of the bird. It looks kind of strange here. So a lot of things are wrong with this photo. The fact that the photo is backlit is not a serious problem. Sometimes backlit photos can work well. For example, here's a backlit photo that I like. But back to the bananaquit, in this case, the lighting on the bananaquit isn't doing it any favors. So I'm just going to show you what happens if I stand in exactly the same spot, but I just turn around almost 180 degrees where the sun is shining on a potential subject. So the next photo I have is I'm standing in the same location, but I turned around, and you'll see what that looks like. So now this is another bananaquit. I don't think it's the same one, but it's the same basic set of trees and flower complexes. And how I got this photo was that I looked around and I noticed which flowers didn't have too many distractions around them. And then I waited for the bird to visit this flower. These bananaquits were flying from flower to flower, so I paid special attention to the flowers with little distractions. And you'll see that if I go to the comparison feature, you'll see that the second photo is much more organized. It still has a little bit of chaos in the background. There's a plant. You've got still a nice blue background. But now the elements of the photo are much more organized. You'll see that the flower form on the top is unobstructed. The bird is sort of peeking out of the flower in a very nice pose that sort of even matches the flower up here and some of these green stems down here. In short, the second photo illustrates the subject much better than the first photo. That's not to say that the second photo is better than the first photo in every respect. I mean, the second photo doesn't capture that chaotic nature, it doesn't capture that cool background, it doesn't have certain elements like some of those bokeh balls that could be interesting. But this just illustrates the act of simplification. If a scene is too complex and there are too many elements that you don't want in the scene like in the first photo, it's better to choose a more simplified photo that illustrates the subject more strongly. That doesn't mean you should ignore backlit shots or never take a backlit shot. And in fact, in another case, maybe if I controlled the background a little better in the first shot, there could be some interest in taking a more backlit shot or a more dramatic shot. But since the background of the first shot is so chaotic and there are so many elements that just take away from the photo and don't illustrate the subject very well, it's actually better to find, at the very least, a background which is better and the various objects of your photo better arranged so that the subject, the bird and the flower and its environment is better illustrated. So that's my tip for today. If you go to a place and there are many branches, many flowers, keep an eye out for scenes in which all the elements are arranged in a logical way, or at least a way that kind of gives the viewer a sense of all of the objects. It isolates the main points and gets rid of the distractions. And that is a great way to improve your bird photography. You're going to go from a photo that looks like this, where there are so many elements that you can only do so much with in post-processing, to a photo like this, where the main subject is clear, sharp, well lit, and it gives the viewer an immediate sense of what is going on. That doesn't mean you should ignore chaotic compositions. In this case, I didn't have an opportunity to control the chaos, so I went for a more simplified composition. I hope that helps you with your bird photography. If you have any suggestions, please leave them in the comments, and I'll see you again next time.